Hey, Scott Jordan and Mark Warner for Jancast number 169. Boy, we're almost getting to 200 for May 23rd, 2024. Mark, how the heck are you doing?
I am just doing my best to keep up with all the news that's coming in, Scott. Oh my
Oh, yeah.
goodness, the world is on fire.
On fire more than one way on
Yeah,
fire,
more than
right?
one way. Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
as you think about it, we're hearing about wildfires in Canada and wildfires in Texas.
Yeah.
Well, in Mexico, invading Texas, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
So
You were
who knows?
talking to somebody yesterday from Canada about the wildfires. Was that person in Canada?
Yeah, he was in British Columbia, but they were evacuating entire towns.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know. Somebody ought to make something that you can just kind of like wave a magic wand and the fire goes out.
Yeah, wouldn't we hope? So what's happening in the new news out there? You've got some stuff that relates to our show that
Well,
we're going to get into after we go over the latest news. But
it's amazing to me how the world is kind of changing a little bit, and everybody is getting deeper and deeper into wanting to know the science behind cleaning and disinfection. And it used to be considered just an art. Who can't clean?
yeah,
But now it's looked at as a science. It's looked at as a science of not just cleaning, but of disinfection. And so during the IICRC S410 Infection Control Standards Committee that I sit on, the meeting was recently. Part of that discussion was about some articles that were published recently about how clean is safe and its reverse, which is how safe is clean.
hmm,
And what all that really means is that there's this certain people factor that we ignore. I mean, don't ignore, but we know it's there, but we don't really talk about it a lot. And that is that somebody might have the right products to use, but if they don't know how to use them, they're not um, disinfecting a
yeah,
surface.
right,
And the reverse is true. They may be very wise on how to procedurally use it, but if the products they're working with aren't efficacious for what they're trying to kill, then they're just exercising. They're not disinfecting. So
yeah,
it's that marriage of those two things that come into play. And then there's this other element they're calling the human factor, and that is, well, people make mistakes. So how do you really know if somebody, even if they've had the right training and they got the right stuff, how do you know they actually did it right and didn't forget to do it? So part of how clean is safe, um, this gets into a deep dive on things like uh, bacteria, viruses, spores, and all that is invisible to the naked eye. And then the reverse of that, which is how safe is clean. If it looks visibly clean, really doesn't mean that there isn't a microfilm of bacteria, viruses, or spores there. So that created a really rather intense discussion and why the world needs to kind of go down this whole science path. And
right,
realistically, Scott, what's got us talking about this is we've had some unbelievably fantastic guests
yeah,
lately,
yeah.
that have kind of reinforced this whole science thing, from Dr. Gerba from the University of Arizona, who spoke
Yeah.
about all kinds of weird things that had my skin crawling, right?
Yeah.
And but prior to that, we had Steve Cooper on from Bioplanet talking about some of the equipment that's used
Hmm.
to enhance the effects of a
That was
disinfectant.
that was in the form of a rebuttal to our blanket statement that all electrostatic sprayers don't work. So we stand corrected on that. Some of them work.
He brought such great science into the play there.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. And
Yeah.
prior to him, we had Bob Ferguson on from Kiekelman, who is an expert on the use of adenosine triphosphate meters, commonly called ATP meters,
Yep.
for verifying. So part of what all these articles talk about is it may look safe, and somebody might have said they did it, but maybe the world needs to embrace verification.
Yep.
Before they put you on the table and cut out your kidney, you might want to make sure that the table's safe. So verification is really relevant
Yeah.
too. And then, the other thing, Scott, is, which don't tell anybody, but we've got a mystery future guest
That's
coming
right. Yeah.
that can dive into a lot more of the same kind of topics. So,
More stuff to think about when you're breathing, walking, touching, all that stuff. So
well, I loved your idea. You said, all the stuff Somebody ought to gather all this information.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've been since the whole pandemic blew up. We learned that we have to wash our hands. We learned about, like you were just talking about, dwell time. We learned all that standard stuff, but we didn't get the basic kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, but our name is going to be patho-factoids. So we're going to put out there some of the stuff like which bathroom stall is the preferred bathroom stall if you have to go to the bathroom in a business situation. Now, none of that was covered during the pandemic, right?
Right.
People were cleaning vegetables and stuff, but they weren't worrying about what stall to go into or any of this other stuff. So we thought, well, why don't we put together a resource, and it'll be a page to start with. It might end up being its own website, but a page on the Bullen site, which we'll have links below for it, that gives you all those kind of weird factoids or pathofactoids that you should be aware of, because that ties in with all the science-based stuff. I mean, this is not made up. It's logical kind of, if it's this, this, and this, then you should do X, right?
Well, the interesting thing, there's things that we all tend to know, and we were kind of making a list of a half dozen or so that everybody seems to know. And like, you need to wash your hands.
Yeah,
You should use
don't
hand
touch your
sanitizer.
face.
Yeah, don't touch your face. You should wear a mask when you're sneezing, maybe an edible mask if you don't want to have to throw it away. Just kidding.
Germwashing.com if you want to learn more about that.
But there were like all kinds of other things that have come up in these conversations that I couldn't even knew words like toilet plume.
Yeah, there you go.
Laser sighted toilet plumes, which and it tied into sink splash plumes identified through laser sightings. And then who knew? Dr. Gerba talked about the carpet stomping plume, which, if you can see dust come up from the carpet, you're in the middle.
The first two are in a bathroom, which at least you can think, okay, I'm going into the bathroom. I got these things to deal with, but carpet stomping plume, that's like any place that has carpet.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, carpet hides soil, and if it's allowed to go too long, it can really build a lot of
all the
soil.
more reason to use our carpet sanitizer, which we were the innovators of that. By the way, what do we call that? That was a blatant product plug, I believe, right?
Yes, BPP.
Well, and one more, Mark. You have a famous one that I can remember back in the day when we used to fly all over the place. You had this god awful image in my head whenever I go on a plane or a train or whatever. And what's that called?
That's called the carry-on, carry-over contamination, which when you're like in the restroom and you notice somebody has their carry-on bag and they set it down into the next to them while they're standing facing the wall. And of course, those floors are not dry. So sometimes they set it down and it even splashes. And you know what that is. And then you get on the plane and you see the guy next to you happen to be the guy that you saw splash the puddle. And next thing you know, they're putting their carry-on in their lap. They're putting it on their tray. They're handling all that. And then they reach over and want to shake your hand. It's like, carry on, carry over contamination. There we go.
So everybody's got to feel really calm and really good about going in the buildings, bathrooms, whatever. But we have more.
Well, some of the other stuff that we've been digging up, Scott, were all the stats. Like, who knew all the stats about restrooms? Like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
84% of people in restrooms are doing voice calls on their cell phone.
Yeah.
Worse than that, Scott, 27% are making video calls while they're sitting there.
Yeah, there you go.
Thinking.
That's a good one. Yeah.
All right. And even worse, 38% are not only on the phone making video calls while they're sitting there thinking, but they're eating. And
what could go wrong? What could go wrong?
The worst statistic in the world is that 2/3 of the people say this is disgusting.
Yeah, and those are the people that filled out the survey.
My question is, why isn't it 100% of the people that find that disgusting?
Yeah.
It should be 100% or 99.999%.
Yeah.
But anyway, those are statistics. That'll be in Patho-Factoids page.
Yeah. So we got a couple others to worry about. So obviously, something you touch a lot, remote controls, right? particularly if you're staying in a hotel or something. God forbid you touch the remote control, because
And so the
boy,
crazy thing is, you remember during COVID, staying in hotels, they would wrap plastic over the remote
yeah,
and say, this is sanitized for your safety and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Well, I had a conversation with somebody that was involved as a housekeeper for a hotel, and they said, yeah, we do that. I'm like, I think that's such a great idea. She goes, well, we just wipe it down. We just wipe the plastic cover down, same cloth that we were wiping the sink with. I'm like, what? Like, here I'm thinking I'm totally safe because it's got a fresh wrapper on it, but it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
necessarily a fresh wrapper. It could be a wrapper that maybe got wiped down, or somebody looked at it and said, well, that looks clean.
I always wonder. I always wonder about those glasses in the plastic bag too. That's kind of in the same category, right? It's like, yeah,
It
sure, it's sanitized. Yeah, right.
it potentially, and even back in the day before they used little Keurig like cups, they had coffee pots in there,
Yeah,
and we actually talked about that in previous
yeah,
Jancasts
yeah,
about videos catching housekeepers using toilet swabs to clean the clean the coffee pot because it fits
yeah,
in there. So
yeah,
that's kind of crazy. But
yeah.
there are other things, like not necessarily related to the remote control for the TV, but things that we're all touching every day also.
Yep, yep. Like keyboards. That's a
Exactly.
killer. I mean,
Yeah.
fortunately, in most cases, you're probably using your own keyboard. But if you're in an environment where multiple people could potentially use that keyboard, stay away from it.
I think we're talking about the business office
Yeah,
section of the
yeah,
hotel, right?
yeah, yeah,
Do they disinfect those keys? I don't know.
yeah,
But
yeah.
tied into all that, Scott, and it reminds me of this. We didn't have this on our list, but elevator buttons.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, elevator buttons. And do you remember which one was the most contaminated elevator button in any hospital?
Is it the open closed door one?
Button number one, because
Oh,
everybody that visits sick patients comes into the elevator and hits the one button to go down to the lobby and leave.
oh.
So, like, wow, who knew that?
So you gotta go like this, right?
Actually, the one of the pieces of advice I got back in the day was the proper technique was not to use your elbow and not to
No.
kick it like a toilet seat, but stand there with your arms crossed and wait for somebody else to get in, and then just look at them and say, "One, please."
Oh, that's brilliant.
Who knew? Who knew?
So you let your fellow passenger get contaminated.
Exactly. Just
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
shake their hand on the way out. Like, good
And
seeing you
then
again.
meanwhile, you have to hold your breath for the whole time you're in the elevator too, right? Because that's good. I think I read about that somewhere too. It doesn't do you any good to hold your breath when you're walking by somebody that's coughing and stuff like that.
And if you can hold your breath for 10 or 15 minutes without turning blue.
Yeah,
But some of the things that we were getting some advice from Charles Gerbon had to do with how in your house too,
yeah.
where you're not around a lot of people. And that was things like dish sponges. He
Hmm.
said it's safer to lick your toilet seat at home than to lick your dish sponge. And I couldn't shake that image. Some things
We
you
gotta, we reach out to him and ask him because I've heard what you're supposed to do is put your sponge in your dishwasher. But
yes.
I don't know. I'm not sure if that's real, if that really does something or not. But we might, I'll do some research on that. We'll
There may
put it
be
in,
some science we can
we'll put it in
explore.
this. Yeah, it might be a complete misnomer as far as it doesn't do anything, right? Or it could, God forbid, it actually makes it worse,
Who knows?
right? Yeah,
And
we
then
got
there's like the
so back to the office for a second. The microwave and the coffee maker. Maybe you could ask one of your associates, hey, if you're going to the lunchroom, get me a cup of coffee, right? That
yeah,
way
the
you
one.
don't have to do it kind of like the elevator button thing.
Yeah. Could you program in 1.5 minutes to that microwave and hit the start button for me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we got a lot more like money. God forbid money. Oh my gosh. I mean, nowadays, like I can pay for stuff with my Apple Watch, so I don't even have to get out bills. But money's a really bad one. Yeah.
Well, the craziest thing is when you see somebody go, they're struggling, and then they go, start counting it out. It's like, how did that taste, by the
Yeah,
way?
yeah. One of the stats is researchers found that most dollar bills are covered within 3,000 types of bacteria. Everything from the germs that cause acne to microbes so people will lick their fingers when they count pills, like you just talked about. So, wow, boy, all really good stuff, huh?
Yeah, ATM machines,
Yeah,
they kind of come into play. All these public touch things.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Kitchen towels. Kitchen towels probably in the same category as the sponges, I would think.
Well,
So,
that kind of leads me to thinking about what you brought up earlier, and that is it really efficacious to put a sponge into the dishwasher? And it kind of segues with if we're just washing our dish towels in the washing machine, is that doing anything? And there's been studies that show that norovirus and other forms of spores that cause infectious diseases survive the laundry machine. Like, okay. Like, okay.
well, so
So,
how do we close out this Jancast on a positive note? We've given all this information, so nobody's going to want to go out of their house. Well, actually, you should go out of your house because it's safer to go to the bathroom at work than it is at your house. So if you got to go out of your house, go to the bathroom at work and then go back home, and don't touch any dish soap or anything else. So, is that a positive takeaway?
we can use that as a positive takeaway. The good news is after we made everybody sick, is that now we can make you better. So all you need to do is to tap into Jancast.com, podcasting to a cleaner and healthier world, and check out the Patho-Factoids page, and you'll know things to avoid, what to
Yep.
do, what not to do. So we are making the world a safer place by enhancing everyone's
Yes.
knowledge.
And
How's that,
we'll,
Scott? Was that the positive spin?
That's positive, and we're going to keep adding to it. So it's going to be a resource for Patho-Factoids.
Got it.
And we should be noted as we came up with that name. Probably should trademark that.
There you go.
Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and stay tuned for the mystery guest that we're going to have on our next show. Looking forward to that, and it ties in with some of the stuff we've talked about. And Mark, you're going to be on the road a little bit here and there, but we'll be back in a couple weeks.
You got it. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody.
Stay safe and don't touch anything. See ya.